So I'm back. The machine went off. I was talking to you about 2004 and what happened there. So, the Journey people, the power that's been behind all of this, saved this house for 10 years and then put us in it. And it was the house of the seventh son, who was a faith healer and cured people's cancer of their throat back in 1778, which is when this house was built. It would turn out that a person that signed the Declaration of Independence was in this house. A person that signed the New Hampshire Declaration of Independence built this house. So I didn't know what all this was about. There was a bookstore. Oh, my stuff was supposed to be sent out to me, and the guy never brought the trailer. So all my stuff was stolen, most of it. So I kept trying to get that. We went back to California a couple of times. Oh, I'm not sure I finished the El Moro story, but when I went out there on Easter morning, I walked out there and there were two lights in the forest, and I kept thinking about the alien abduction thing when the guy walks into the forest, nobody knows where he is, and there's a light. And so I didn't. So I walked to the view vista point of El Moro, and it was 7 a.m. and the sun was shining in behind me, and I looked up at El Moro, and there was, get this, nobody sees this, a white rainbow, a totally white rainbow. And what I had seen in the forest was the end of that rainbow, and on the opposite end was another end. So I knelt down to pray. After all, it was Easter Sunday, and I knew that God had showed me something that was a miracle. All of my work has to do with optics and light, and I knelt down to pray for about 2 minutes. I got back up, everything was gone. Fog was gone, rainbow was gone. It was just blue sky. You could see El Moro. Because at first I thought it was the lights from the ranger station there, and it wasn't. And I'm like, this is so cool. So I'm walking back to the cabin, and I look down in the forest, and there is a large hare rabbit, just like the one that Albert Durer drew. I'm like, this guy is just watching me. He's one of the best food sources in the whole desert. And he's just standing there. Another sign, an Easter rabbit. And it was, like I said, an Albert Durer hare. So then we were on our way and we came here. And then that's when we went to a book sale at the ice rink. And our realtor, who we met in Salem, ironically, called us and said, oh, there's a house up there by you. It's an hour away. Go see it. So we did. And so we got the house at a really good deal. And that's where I was supposed to finish out the rest of this. And that's what I'm trying to save right now, one of the things. So I then found out about the Homestead Bookstore, which this guy and his family had owned for about 40 years. And I was finding really good books on what I was working on Washington and history and stuff. And so they were going to close it up and sell it, which they did. And so I found out that for $5,000 I could buy the whole contents of the bookstore. And supposedly the shelves would sell for about $2,000, which didn't happen. Doesn't matter. And so basically I bought it. And I started moving it. There were 50,000 books in this bookstore. I got down to, remember now, I'm following this track of who my family were and what they did. I already knew we were Jonathan Edwards, related to Jonathan Edwards, the Jonathan Edwards. I already knew that we were Edwards and we were from Maine. Which I didn't know was that those Edwards were from Connecticut. And so I got down to the last bookshelf that I went through every book, looked through it to see if it was going to come back here to the house. 10,000 books did. And then I was going to maybe open up another bookstore near us, which somebody was actually a Palmer. I got down to the last book, and it was called Interesting People. It was done by Corinna Smith, and she lived at Loon Point in Dublin, just above us. Her husband went to the pyramids and painted and drew the pyramids for the Boston Museum of Art and for Harvard. And so, but her brother, turned out she was Corinna Smith Putnam. Her brother was George C. Putnam, son of George C. Putnam, who published Putnam Books. And his wife was Amelia Earhart. So that when Lindbergh flew over and did all of his travels and stuff, they came to Loon Point. And they also came to the Atwood House, which is another man that built a castle here near here. And he figured out how to purify water with electricity. Everybody in this journey is purifying water that we need. And in the meantime, Polar Springs has been stealing our water, poisonous water. And I've been trying to fix that. We had to not use our well because it had arsenic and lead in it. So I was buying bottled water. Now I have to buy the stolen water from us. But this is the weird part about it. While I was here, I did, in 2015, the Great Pyramid of Giza, mathematics. And it turns out that there was a man named Petrie, Sir William Flinders Petrie, and he did the markers for the the Stonehenge and the Great Pyramid of Giza, and he was here, and he was friends with Joseph Linden Smith and Corinna Smith. He's in their book. And so that lined up the mathematics for here. In 2015, I did the most elaborate mathematical drawings ever. I drew the Great Pyramid of Giza, I worked on the math, and then I started making snow sculptures. 2018, I had to have a hernia operation, and I was here. I had to shovel the driveway, and so I put it all into a circle. I was going to do a replica of the library I was going to build here that had a dome, so I was going to make something that looked like a humidor in snow. So I made a 13-foot circle with 3-foot high walls, about 16 inches wide, thick. And I was walking around in it, and there was a lady here that was visiting, and I was showing her the stars, and we were looking at Orion. And so she thought that was really cool, walking around in the snow circle I made. So after that day, I thought, well, I'll make this an observatory. And I left it there, and I bricked in the pattern of the snow once it melted. And so from then on, I would sometimes rebuild it, sometimes not. Well, this year, I rebuilt it. But before I rebuilt it, I decided to make it into a Stonehenge. I have the stones for it. But I couldn't get a tractor to help me put the stones up. There's a video of me moving one of the stones. Very cool. But I drew this amazing circle, and I drew these amazing trenches, and I made it like a giant compass with an 8-sided and 8-point star type of thing. And that was cool. Then I found out that I wasn't supposed to finish it because when the snow came, I had put a tree up there and lights around it, and it's the Golden Compass, and it's now at the house. So this leads me into one of the last parts. I found out that all of them, while I was digging that, I dug up a little, about this big, an actual stone head, probably 2,000 years old, very simple. I also dug up a draw knife that built this house, and other things that built this house, all from 1778, all in the ditch that I was digging. So then I got a book called Dark Matter or something like that, and they had a picture of what I had put in the ground, and it's a good thing I didn't finish it. Turns out it's called the Golden Compass. It is the I Ching, and it is 64. I did paintings when I was in college about a guy playing chess with a phantom guy. And so there I am. And then I got a National Geographic on glass, and I got one on Merlin, and I got one on Leonardo da Vinci's Codex Atlanticus, which is what has my drawings in it. I now have 100 mathematical sacred geometry drawings, and I want to put them on a big exhibit, hopefully maybe at Smithsonian. I now have tons of stuff to do with Smithsonian. I read about Smithsonian. The Smithsonian burned. My relative's house burned in San Juan Bautista. There was a fire in that place. My Edwards side burned. Oh, then I found out all about the Edwards. So what I want to do now is with this last National Geographic, the National Geographic on Merlin, on my life pattern followed that of Leonardo da Vinci's. I paint like him, I draw like him. I worked on the Salvador Monday thing, which sold for $4.5 million. And basically, I want somebody to save my project. There is another thing, and this is for the Lagina brothers, because my wife isn't going to send them a letter. My wife thinks Rick is a really nice, sweet person when she saw him cry. And so I wanted to send him this. I am the third Lagina brother. If not by name, by lifestyle. As a boy, I also collected things, and I was into gold and silver. And I read something called Treasure Magazines. And that is where I read about Oak Island. The only difference between me and the Lagina brothers is I succeeded. I have someplace a safe deposit box, and it has all this gold and silver coins I found. I did metal detect like this guy, but there was a beach down there where you could go in Monterey, and the ocean, it was a dump, ironically, and the ocean sifted out the heavy metals, and that was the gold and silver. And it was from 1920 to 1950, and they would also burn down there. There was these big rocks, and if my project ever gets done here, I want one of those rocks brought up here. They were huge melted rocks of just conglomerate, metal, cans, and I used to collect big pieces of bronze and copper. I actually one day found a gold ring with palm leaves on it, and it turned out to be my wedding ring. I lost it, stole along with the rest of our stuff. But the thing is, that was cool. I found my own wedding ring. Now, when I was here going through, we found out about the Palmers and the Putmans, and it turns out that the Putmans were the ones that originated. Those two women, Ann Putman and her mother, created the witch trials, created the hysteria, made up all the stories. But they were connected to a slave called Tibuda, and she gave them drugs, and she was against the people. Now, she was saved because she was a slave, whereas 200 people died, and many more were in prison. And it turns out I'm also working with the Parkers, and one of the Parker ladies was also killed. But the Parkers moved here to Peterborough, and I was going to have this big giant clue game with my boxes of books, and it didn't happen. And it turns out that they brought a piece of the Salem house to Peterborough here. So we got so many millions of things. And so now, once I found out Leonardo made a telescope, Galileo made a telescope, I found a reflecting telescope in the metal bin, and I found the lens separate. The lens for the Hubble telescope were done in Brattleboro. I played music in that church, and this is all lining up. Now, the end of this is the house. The house still has 10,000 books in it, and the house has to be finished out, if even just for a year. And the last thing that's going to be done here is, I was preparing for my daughter's wedding, which didn't happen, and so I bought dishes, and I was going to put chopped off fruit trees and painted white with lights all through them in the barn. And I was going to have a big party to celebrate Professor Z, which is a man I created, and all the stars here and the Golden Compass. But then I found out from the last National Geographic, and they really should come here and talk to me if I'm still alive, or otherwise come here. They will have 10 years of writing. I've written 5 million words. And all of it has to do with them. They also had to do with Lindbergh coming across the country on his U.S. trip, and that he dropped one of the pamphlets over at Keene, and I've touched it. And so again, I have a major Lindbergh exhibit that I've created, and it has to do with my book, and so they could publish one of my books. But I actually worked on a place where he flew his glider off in Monterey. I was a kid. I worked on a ranch that my father got me, and so I got to later in the book, I flew an airplane that was like his. That airplane flipped upside down. It's gone now, but it was the same identical airplane as his, and it was an Italian airplane. So they need to do this for 2027. That will publish my book. Then they can go into the Mark Twain section. They can go into Leonardo da Vinci section. They can go into Robert Louis Stevenson section, Treasure Island. They can go into Longfellow, which is now a national monument, his house, the Craigie House, ironically named after me, Craigie. And so that's another story. There's all these stories. The long or the short of it is what I want is on April 8th, I want them to have a big party here. They can have it outside and in the barn and in the house. They can do the movie, and it's going to be a total solar eclipse on that day. And April has always been the month. It's the month of the miracles. It's the month of when I did other things, and all having to do with light. I was here on the equinox, and my wife and I hiked up Monadnock for me to do this experiment, and she was wearing the wrong kind of glasses, and she got stuck. So we were up there, and so I had come back, and that was a Wednesday, and a man died the day after that from Boston, about our age. So I had to go back up to do my experiment. So I took 3 poles, and I walked up there, and I did the experiment, and on the way back, people were going up there to stay up there overnight, and they said, well, we're going up to see the eclipse. But see, when you looked at it from there, you had to look at it off to the side. So I came back down. I wasn't going to do that. And I came over to my house, and standing where people can stand on April 8th, I looked up, and the moon was orange, and it was double. And I took amazing pictures of it. I don't have cameras that take nighttime pictures. And so that was cool. And again, I was supposed to be where I was supposed to be, and that is this house. The same place people can be standing on April 8th. So I just want to make sure that this gets out there. And then overall, my house will produce many books, 165 of them, and library books and whatever. And I will save my life's work. Now we're starting from when I was 12 years old. In the same issue on the eclipse is the fungus issue. Now I've lived with this fungus forever, and the fungus is killing me, but I tried to get rid of it and do a lot of work on it. But see, I'm living proof that what they told me about the cancer when I was 12 years old. Oh, the other thing about it is Merlin was a druid, and my family were druids, and we're in Stonehenge. And one of the things they did is they harvested mistletoe. And mistletoe is a fungus on a tree, which was very cool because I found an article that was done in 1977. Now, this is just proof that what they showed me, they were proving to me. In 1977, a man was using mistletoe for curing cancer. He came upon a stage 4 woman with stage 4 cancer. He made a concoction of mistletoe, he gave it to her, he cured her. And guess what? The federal government cut off his funding, his work went to there. So there is another proof of what they told me. When my wife got cancer, the spirit world saved. When I did something I was supposed to do in my house in Monterey, I did a light experiment, and they wanted me to, and that again was around Easter time. And so the light miraculously came down through my house, went out the other end. It was a rippling light. It had to do with water. And so the first person, it was the 14th day of April 2013. And so I sealed the house back up. The 15th day came along, nothing. 16th day came along, giant, even with the house sealed, giant X in my floor. And I oriented all of my work towards my star work. 15th day of that day, the day in between, my daughter was supposed to be standing at the Boston Marathon. They told her to go away, take the little girl with her. She did. Everybody that was connected to me, including the cameraman that I met later, was next to one of those bombs and was saved. And so that was saving my daughter because I did what they wanted me to do, because they saved me. And I did things. I mean, we were trying to sell our house, and I was cutting holes in our house, taking things down I'd put up. And so it didn't work at first, but then it did. It went right through a little window, and it was cool. And then I tried to do it going back. It didn't work. And then the 16th day came, and that was the X. Well, not too long after that, my daughter worked in Oregon. She was walking home from work, and she crossed out into the corner, and a car came speeding around. She doesn't know why she wasn't hit. I do. Family member number 2. Family member number 3. My wife was living in Malden because she was a nanny, and that's where I was buying the books from the Medford Library. And that's where I bought all these very cool books, including on Frederick Douglass, and shipped them back here. That's where I bought a library book by Longfellow from the Dublin Library here and shipped it back here. And my wife got a pain in her side, and I wasn't there at the time. I was back here at the house. And so they weren't going to, but they took her to the Melrose Hospital. It turned out she had a gallstone, really bad. And so they took it out, and so decisions were made from other people that had gallstones in our family and all that kind of stuff, gallbladder problems, that they take the whole gallbladder out. So then she was shifted, well, I don't know, at some point she was shifted to Tufts. And so they were going to go in with the little suction thing and suck it out, which would have ripped it open, the gallbladder bag. They couldn't get in there. They couldn't see my spirit world, remember? And so they took the whole gallbladder out in a sack without disturbing it. It had a lot of gallstones in it. And they took it to the lab, and there was a tumor growing off the side of it, and it was cancer. And so they went back and did another surgery to scrape around. It was attached to the lining of the pancreas, I think, liver, something, and gallbladder maybe. I don't know. Whatever. They took it all out, and they went in there and scraped around and got what they could, and then checked it out, did a bio on it, and it was clear. When I was talking to the doctor that was working with her, they were going to give her chemo just to make sure. And so then, because there was so little there, nothing there, they decided not to. And I asked the doctor what the chemo was, and guess what it is? It's oak poison. So, like, again, saved another member of my family. What they were showing me was true. And now they are using stuff, and now they're going to be using the fungus to kill the cancer. And there is a fungus that grows around the cancer cells. Just like, this is so bizarre. Anyway, long and short of it is, April 8th, fix my house, set up the party, however many people come. We can't accommodate 1,000 people unless they're in the field next door, and we'd have to get permission for that. So just make this work. This is it. This is the biggest moment man has been waiting for 2,000 years. There is a stone here. Wait, let me finish. There is a stone here, a big sacred round stone that is from 2,000 years ago. I'm thinking the little head I found was also 2,000 years old. There are some people that I call the Simonites that came from, they were the disciples of St. John the Baptist, and they came here with the Phoenicians, and they settled in this place, and then they went all over the United States. So I can now give a conclusive history. Oh, by the way, Oak Island is one of the markers for my Stonehenge here. And that's what it was. And Nolan's Cross is totally lined up with the Northern Cross, and it also lines up. So my work, and I'm hoping that the Lugino brothers come here and help my wife and save my project, will answer all of their questions. The last guy that was on there was talking about Nolan's Cross. That's here. So Oak Island was only a marker, and it was also used for the Venus transit. And all of this information, one of the guys that was there, Captain John Mason, was administrator of Newfoundland, and he was also a pirate chaser. He was 1610 as well as Captain John Smith. So it all fits what they're digging up now. And I watched the last one. They need to come here, and hopefully I'll still be alive. I don't think so. They could fly over here in a minute, and then they could help my wife, and they could actually own a house or support a house that's and it's all here, pre-money pit. Now all they have is big holes in the ground. So, did we get this? Well, good luck. And I hope you guys enjoy my work someday.